Nietzsche forces us to see life without filters. He is not interested in consolation or conventional morality, which teaches us to view betrayal as an anomaly, as if it were an unexpected break in the natural harmony of human relationships. For him, betrayal is not an accident or a miscalculation. It is not an isolated case of immorality or weakness of character. It is rather an inevitable manifestation of a deeper reality, the constant struggle between wills. From the moment two people interact, an invisible tension arises. Each has their own desires, aspirations, and priorities. In a world where everyone seeks to assert themselves and move forward, interests inevitably come into conflict. Sometimes these conflicts are resolved diplomatically through agreements or mutual concessions. But when one party feels they cannot get what they want by direct means, betrayal becomes a tempting resource. It is not an irrational or purely impulsive act, but a strategy that arises when someone perceives that loyalty is no longer useful to them. Nietzsche was not naive about human nature. His philosophy shatters the illusion that the world is guided by principles of justice or universal harmony. For him, everything that happens in life is determined by a fundamental principle, the will to power. This concept should not be understood as a mere desire to dominate others, but as the essential force that drives every being to expand, to assert itself, to overcome the limitations it encounters along the way. Every human action, conscious or unconscious, is marked by this will to grow, to gain ground in a world where competition is inescapable. From this perspective, betrayal is nothing more than a symptom of this struggle. It occurs when someone sees an opportunity to advance at the expense of another. It is not necessarily an act of evil, but a manifestation of the natural dynamic between conflicting wills. In a system where each individual seeks to assert themselves, betrayal becomes a latent possibility in any relationship. It can arise in friendship, in love, in business, or in any other human bond, because in all these scenarios there are expectations, implicit agreements, and balances of power that can be broken at any moment. Nietzsche's vision demands that we abandon victimhood. It's not about lamenting or becoming outraged at betrayal, because doing so would mean clinging to a naive view of reality. To believe that loyalty is an unbreakable value is to misunderstand human nature in its entirety. Loyalty exists, but it is neither unconditional nor eternal. It depends on the circumstances, the interests at stake, and the changes that occur in each individual's life. What seems solid today may collapse tomorrow, and that does not mean the world is unjust, but rather that it is dynamic, unpredictable, governed by forces beyond any romantic ideal of absolute trust. Nietzsche despised simplistic explanations. It is not enough to say that someone betrays because they are bad or disloyal. Betrayal is not a matter of morality, but of strategy. It happens when conditions change, when what once united no longer does, when one party realizes it is more beneficial to break the pact than to maintain it. Loyalty, in many cases, is a matter of convenience. The idea that someone will remain faithful forever, no matter the circumstances, is a fiction that life itself disproves. This way of understanding betrayal is not easy to accept, because it means recognizing that no one is exempt from being betrayed at some point. But it also allows us to see reality more clearly. Instead of trusting blindly, it invites us to pay attention to changes in human dynamics. It is not about living in paranoia, but about understanding that relationships are not static. Every person evolves, their priorities change, and with them, their loyalties as well. Nietzsche pushes us to adopt a stronger stance toward life. Betrayal stops being a painful surprise and becomes a possibility we must keep in mind, not to become cynical, but to develop greater autonomy, to stop depending on the loyalty of others as if it were a sacred principle. Whoever understands this stops clinging to unrealistic expectations and learns to navigate reality with greater wisdom. This approach not only explains why betrayal happens, but also allows us to face it with greater clarity. If loyalty is a pact conditioned by changing circumstances, the key question is not how to avoid being betrayed, but how to grow stronger in the face of the inevitability of change. Betrayal is a reminder that life is not governed by fixed ideals, but by a constant flow of competing forces. And understanding this is the first step to stop seeing betrayal as an unexpected blow and begin seeing it as a test of our own strength. If betrayal is proof that life is a struggle of wills in constant tension, then it is inevitable to ask why some people betray, while others seem to remain loyal, even when they have the opportunity to break a pact for their own benefit. For Nietzsche, the answer is not found in traditional moral values or in the supposed existence of a universal ethical code, but in a fundamental distinction that runs throughout human history: the difference between slave morality and master morality. Societies have built narratives that exalt loyalty as an absolute virtue, but behind this exaltation hides a mechanism of control. Loyalty, in many cases, is nothing more than a tool to subdue those who might otherwise rebel. When someone betrays, what they are really doing is breaking a structure of submission. However, not all betrayals have the same nature or the same purpose. Some are driven by the need to reaffirm one's own existence, while others are acts of resentment disguised as justice. Here's where Nietzsche introduces his distinction between two types of morality that explain the deep reasons why someone decides to betray. Master morality is the morality of those who create their own destiny without asking for permission or justifying themselves to anyone. They don't need to betray because their power does not depend on hidden maneuvers or manipulating others. Their will to power is expressed directly through action, through affirming their own path, and through the ability to take responsibility for their decisions. In this type of morality, betrayal is unnecessary because strength and self-confidence eliminate the need to act in the shadows. On the other hand, slave morality is born from resentment. Those who live under this framework do not have the capacity to assert themselves openly in the world, either due to fear, insecurity, or because social structures have taught them to repress themselves. Instead of acting with strength, they seek indirect mechanisms to obtain what they desire. Betrayal then becomes an act of revenge, a way to equalize a perceived injustice without confronting the issue directly. This kind of betrayal does not arise from the desire to move forward independently, but from accumulated resentment toward those who have managed to assert themselves without asking for permission. Nietzsche sees in human history a constant confrontation between these two types of morality. Slave morality always tries to impose itself through manipulation, promoting values that justify its weakness and portraying the strong as oppressors. In this context, betrayal acquires a symbolic dimension. It is the way the weak try to overthrow the strong without confronting them openly. It is not a brave action or a declaration of independence, but a sabotage mechanism motivated by envy and resentment. This pattern is repeated in all areas of life. In personal relationships, those who feel they cannot match someone in terms of talent, intelligence, or success resort to betrayal as a way to level the playing field. In politics, figures who cannot impose their vision through authentic leadership seek to undermine their opponents through conspiracies and deceit. In the workplace, those who lack real merit attempt to rise by destroying the reputation of those who have achieved more than they have. In all these cases, betrayal is not an assertion of power, but an expression of powerlessness. Understanding this distinction is crucial for interpreting betrayal more deeply. Not all betrayals are the same. There are betrayals born of ambition and the desire to conquer new territory, and there are betrayals that are the last resort of those who have no other way to express themselves. The difference between the two lies in the intention. The first is a manifestation of the will to create, to expand, to overcome obstacles with determination. The second is an attempt to destroy what another has built, a strategy of the resentful who find no other way to influence the world. What makes betrayal motivated by resentment particularly dangerous is its ability to disguise itself as justice. Those who commit it rarely recognize it as an act of weakness. In their mind, they are correcting a wrong, balancing the scales, avenging a supposed oppression. This self-deception is the essence of slave morality, transforming the inability to act with strength into a virtue, making weakness appear noble and petty, cunning seem heroic. This psychological mechanism is the same one that has shaped many of the moral narratives that society promotes. We are taught to admire those who challenge power from the shadows, to sympathize with those who betray in the name of a supposedly just cause, to view loyalty as an ideal only when it benefits those in a position of weakness. But Nietzsche dismantles this idea and forces us to see betrayal for what it truly is, a reflection of the position one occupies in the hierarchy of life. When someone betrays out of resentment, what they reveal is not cunning or moral superiority, but their inability to face the world with dignity. It is not a show of strength, but confirmation that they have no other way to influence their surroundings. In these cases, betrayal is not an act of freedom, but a confession of slavery. Understanding this allows us to observe betrayal from a broader perspective, not just as an isolated event that occurs in our lives, but as a phenomenon that reflects a deeper structure of thought. The real question is not why people betray, but what kind of betrayal they are committing. It is here where the core of the problem is revealed. Betrayal is not just an act against another individual, but a declaration about the very nature of the betrayer. The one who betrays exposes their nature. Their actions reveal the structure of their thinking and the impulses that govern them. However, betrayal not only defines the one who commits it, it also tests the one who suffers it. In that moment when trust is broken and the idea of security in the other collapses, an abyss opens in consciousness. It is not simply an emotional blow or a wound to pride. It is a direct confrontation with unadorned reality, with the evidence that no relationship is completely stable and that human beings are exposed to unpredictable forces. It is in this moment where true character is revealed. For some, betrayal is a devastating event from which they never fully recover. They become prisoners of that moment, repeating it mentally, trying to understand it or find an explanation that returns their sense of control. But there is no comforting logic in betrayal. It is not a puzzle that can be solved with rational justification. It is a confrontation with the unpredictable, with chaos, with the impossibility of fully controlling others. In this clash with uncertainty, some cling to absolute distrust, avoiding new connections for fear of being vulnerable again. Others seek revenge, believing that only by destroying the traitor can they regain their dignity. But in both cases, the result is the same. They remain dominated by the act of betrayal, trapped in its influence. There is another way to respond, one that does not stem from pain or revenge, but from understanding. Understanding that betrayal, like all human behavior, is a reflection of complex forces at play. It is not an aberration, but a possibility inherent in the nature of relationships. Nietzsche encourages us not to idealize others, nor to expect unchanging loyalty in a world governed by change. Instead, he urges us to build inner strength, to affirm our own will, and to live without illusions. This does not mean abandoning trust altogether, but rather understanding it as a conscious risk, an act of courage, not of naivety. To be betrayed is not a mark of weakness, but a test of our capacity to face life without retreating into resentment. It challenges us to see people not as heroes or villains, but as beings moved by desires, fears, and power dynamics. In this vision, the one who overcomes betrayal is not the one who forgets, nor the one who retaliates, but the one who transforms the experience into wisdom. Betrayal ceases to be a scar and becomes a lesson in perspective. A lesson that teaches us not to fear the fall of illusions, but to grow stronger from them. For Nietzsche, the greatness of the individual lies in their ability to create meaning from the chaos of existence. Betrayal, then, is not an end, but an opportunity to test the solidity of our values, to question our dependencies, and to reaffirm our capacity for autonomy. Only those who stop expecting the world to conform to moral ideals can truly be free. Only those who embrace the rawness of life, with all its contradictions, can rise above it. And in doing so, they no longer suffer betrayal as a wound, but understand it as a mirror, one that reflects not only the other, but ourselves.